The old manor house breathed around Alara like a contented, dreaming beast. The twilight outside had melted into a deep, inky black, punctuated only by the distant sparkle of stars, and the soft glow spilling from the tall, arched windows of Blackwood Manor. Inside, a symphony of warmth and muted luxury embraced her. The air, thick with the scent of aged leather, polished wood, and the faint, sweet perfume of night-blooming jasmine, wafting in from the conservatory, seemed to hum with a quiet anticipation. She stood by the grand fireplace in the drawing-room, a glass of amber-hued brandy warming her palm. The flames danced and flickered, casting shifting patterns of golden shadow across the rich tapestries and oil paintings that adorned the walls. The room itself was a masterpiece of indulgence. Deep, velvet armchairs invited surrender, their fabric a midnight blue that absorbed the light, while the Persian rug beneath her bare feet felt like a cloud underfoot. She'd slipped off her shoes hours ago, unable to resist the sensuous pleasure of the thick pile. Tonight she wore a dress of deep, emerald silk, simple in its cut but opulent in its drape, a whisper against her skin with every subtle movement. It was a dress chosen not just for its beauty, but for the way it made her feeling, elegant, confident, and utterly receptive to the unfolding night. Anticipation was a tangible thing, a delicious tremor beneath her skin. Julian was late, as was his charming habit, but Alara found she didn't mind. His tardiness only served to heighten the exquisite suspense, allowing her senses to sharpen, to fully absorb the opulent quiet before his commanding presence altered its delicate balance. She traced the rim of her glass with a fingertip, the warmth seeping into her skin, a counterpoint to the cool silk of her dress. A soft chime from the hall announced his arrival, a subtle, almost melodic sound that nevertheless sent a thrill through her. She didn't turn immediately, preferring to allow the moment to stretch, to savor the delicious frisson that ran through her veins. Instead, she took a slow sip of the brandy, letting its warmth bloom on her tongue, then slide down her throat, leaving a trail of liquid fire. Alara. His voice, a low baritone, was like the stroke of velvet itself, rich, smooth, and utterly captivating. It resonated through the room, through her very bones, and she felt a smile, slow and genuine, curve her lips before she even turned. He stood framed in the archway, a vision of effortless elegance. A charcoal gray suit, tailored to perfection, clung to the broad expanse of his shoulders and tapered to his lean waist. The crisp white shirt beneath was open at the collar, revealing just a hint of the strong column of his throat. His dark hair, usually impeccably styled, was a little disheveled tonight, as if he'd run a hand through it in thought or haste, giving him a rakish charm that tugged at something deep within her. His eyes, the color of warm amber in the firelight, met hers across the room, and a silent conversation, intimate and charged, began. "Julian," she murmured, her voice a little breathy even to her own ears. "You made it." He offered a slow, devastating smile, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes, and sent a shiver of pure pleasure down her spine. "Did you doubt me?" He moved then, with a languid grace that belied his powerful build, crossing the room towards her. Each step was deliberate, unhurried, yet filled with an undeniable purpose that drew her in. "Never doubt your arrival," she countered, her gaze unwavering, only the exact moment of it. He stopped before her, close enough that she could feel the subtle warmth radiating from his body, close enough to inhale the intoxicating scent of him, an expensive cologne mingled with something uniquely Julian, a hint of cedar and clean skin. It was a scent that always made her feel utterly undone, a potent reminder of the nights they had shared, and the nights they might yet. He reached out, his long fingers brushing lightly against the silk of her sleeve. The contact was fleeting, barely there, yet it sparked an electric current that sizzled through her. A vision, as always. "Alara. That color. It suits you." His voice was a low murmur, intimate, meant only for her ears. "And you, Julian?" she replied, her voice a little huskier than she intended. "As impeccably devastating as ever." He chuckled, a rich, warm sound that wrapped around her like a cashmere blanket. Devastating. Am I? He took the brandy glass from her hand, placing it gently on the mantelpiece beside her own, his fingers brushing hers for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Her skin tingled where he had touched it. Utterly, she confirmed, her eyes meeting his, a playful challenge in their depths, but beneath it, an undeniable longing. He leaned a little closer, his gaze dropping to her lips, then returning to her eyes. Perhaps I should be careful then. His voice had dropped to a near whisper, sending a delicious shiver through her. Devastation can be addictive. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, with the weight of shared history and simmering desire. Their connection, forged over several stolen weekends and clandestine meetings, was a complex tapestry of intellectual sparring, shared laughter, and a profound, undeniable physical chemistry that pulsed beneath the surface of every interaction. They were two kindred spirits drawn together by an invisible, insistent force, and tonight, that force felt particularly potent. He moved to the small antique bar cart, pouring himself a similar measure of brandy. The clink of glass on glass was the only sound in the vast room, an intimate punctuation to their silence. Elara watched him, mesmerized by the lean strength of his hands, the graceful curve of his wrist, the way his dark hair fell across his brow as he concentrated. Every movement was imbued with a quiet power, a controlled elegance that spoke volumes about the man. "Rough day?" she asked, breaking the spell though gently. He turned, a slight frown creasing his brow, which smoothed out as his eyes met hers again. "A demanding one, yes. The usual labyrinth of meetings and negotiations. But," he said, taking a sip of his brandy, his gaze lingering on her, "the moment I stepped through that door, it all evaporated." "Good," she said softly, a genuine warmth spreading through her chest. "That's what Blackwood is for, to shed the world if only for a night." He walked back to her, settling into one of the velvet armchairs opposite her, stretching his long legs out towards the fire. The rich fabric seemed to embrace him, making him look even more relaxed, more at ease. Indeed, and to find solace. His eyes, shadowed by the firelight, held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. The word solaces hung in the air, weighted with a meaning far deeper than its definition. They fell into a comfortable silence, the kind that only truly intimate connections could sustain. The crackle of the fire, the distant hoot of an owl, the soft rustle of her silk dress as she shifted, were the only sounds. Elara found herself simply observing him, taking in the elegant line of his jaw, the subtle curve of his lips as he sipped his drink, the way his dark lashes fanned against his cheek when he lowered his gaze. He was a man of exquisite taste, in art, in wine, and she often suspected in the women he chose to spend his time with. The thought sent a proprietary warmth through her. "What were you thinking about?" he asked suddenly, his voice low, "before I arrived?" She smiled, a slow, secret smile. "The way the light plays on the velvet, the scent of the jasmine. I'm wondering if you'd truly make it tonight." He chuckled again, a deep, resonant sound. "And now that I have?" "Now that you have," she repeated, her gaze sweeping over him, taking in every detail. "The night feels complete." He set his glass down on the small side table beside him, leaning forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees. The movement brought him closer, made him seem more accessible, less like the formidable businessman she knew him to be in the outside world. Here, in the soft glow of Blackwood, he was simply Julian, and she, Elara. "I brought something for you," he said, his eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket, producing a small, velvet-covered box. Elara's heart gave a little leap. "Julian, you shouldn't have." "Perhaps," he conceded, a playful smirk on his lips. "But I wanted to." He held it out to her. She took the box, her fingers brushing against his as she accepted it. The velvet was cool and smooth beneath her touch, mirroring the velvet night that enveloped them. She opened it slowly, her breath catching as she saw the content. Nestled on a bed of cream silk was a delicate silver chain, from which hung a single, perfectly formed pearl, lustrous and ethereal, glowing with an inner light. "It reminded me of you," he said softly. His voice, a caress. Pure, luminous, and with a quiet strength. A blush crept up Ilara's neck, warming her cheeks. No one had ever described her quite like that. It's exquisite, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you. May I? He asked, indicating the necklace. She nodded, turning her back to him, lifting her hair to expose the nape of her neck. She felt the brush of his fingers as he took the necklace from the box. The cool metal against her skin as he fastened the clasp. His touch was feather-light, yet intensely electric, sending a shiver of delight through her. His breath, warm and sweet, stirred the fine hairs on her neck, and she closed her eyes, savoring the delicious sensation of his proximity. When he was done, his hands lingered on her shoulders for a moment, gently squeezing, before he leaned in, his lips brushing against her ear. Perfect, he murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her. She turned back to face him, the pearl cool against her skin, a tangible reminder of his thoughtfulness, his presence. Her gaze met his, and in the depths of his amber eyes, she saw not just admiration, but a hunger that mirrored her own. Julian, she began, her voice barely a whisper, tonight feels different. He nodded, his expression serious, intense. It does. There's a particular kind of magic in the air, wouldn't you say? His hand, warm and strong, reached out and gently cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing slowly, exquisitely, along her jawline. The world seemed to narrow, shrinking until it was just the two of them, bathed in firelight and shadow, adrift in a sea of velvet and longing. His touch was a slow, deliberate burn, igniting a fire deep within her. Her skin hummed under his touch. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She leaned into his palm, instinctively seeking more of his warmth, his presence. His eyes, dark and fathomless, searched hers, seeking permission, seeking a deeper connection. Magic, she agreed, her voice barely audible, and something more. An inevitability. He smiled then, a slow, sensual curve of his lips that promised untold pleasures. His thumb moved from her jaw to her lower lip, tracing its soft curve, sending a jolt of pure desire through her. Her lips parted slightly, a silent invitation. Inevitability, he repeated, his voice a soft rasp. I like the sound of that. He leaned closer, his scent enveloping her, intoxicating her. Her eyelids fluttered heavy with desire. She could feel the warmth of his breath on her face, taste the faint, lingering note of brandy on his. The distance between their lips was infinitesimally small, a tantalizing sliver of air that hummed with unspoken words and raw yearning. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, the magnetic pull that drew them together, closer, always closer. Every nerve ending in her body was alive, tingling, aching for his touch, his kiss. Her fingers, almost of their own volition, reached out, finding purchase on the lapels of his jacket. The fine wool was soft beneath her fingertips, and she imagined the warmth of the skin beneath. She felt the subtle shift of his weight as he leaned in further, his lips just brushing hers, a whisper of contact that sent a tremor through her entire being. Ilara, he breathed, her name a prayer, a question, a promise on his lips. Her eyes fluttered open, meeting his. In their depths, she saw a reflection of her own desire, raw and unbridled. The air crackled with the unspent energy between them, a tension that was both exquisite and almost unbearable. The velvet night outside seemed to press in, enclosing them in their private world, urging them forward, deeper into its seductive embrace. And then he drew back, just slightly, his gaze dropping to her throat, to the delicate pearl resting against her skin. He traced the silver chain with his finger, a lingering touch that was agonizing in its slowness. The night is young, he murmured, his voice a low rumble, and Blackwood has many secrets to reveal. He straightened, moving back to his armchair, a subtle, almost imperceptible distance opening between them once more. Ilara felt a dizzying mix of frustration and heightened anticipation. He was a master of the slow burn, of drawing out the pleasure, of teasing the edge of desire until it was a roaring inferno. She took a shaky breath, her fingers still clutching the lapels of his jacket, even though he had moved away. She released them slowly, the warmth of his touch still imprinted on the fabric. "Secrets," she managed, her voice a little breathless. He smiled. A knowing, enigmatic smile that hinted at depths yet unexplored. "Oh yes, and tonight, I think, is the night for exploration." He picked up his brandy glass again, swirling the amber liquid. "But first," he said, his gaze fixed on hers, holding her captive. "Tell me, Ilara, what secrets do we wish to uncover tonight?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication, a challenge, and an invitation all at once. The fire crackled, the shadows danced, and the velvet night pressed in, promising everything and nothing, all at once. Ilara felt a thrill, a delicious shiver of excitement and apprehension. The game was on, and she was more than ready to play. The pearl at her throat seemed to throb with her own quickening pulse. What secrets indeed? Ilara met his gaze, a slow, knowing smile blossoming on her lips. The air between them, already thick with unspoken desires, seemed to shimmer. "Secrets, Julian?" she purred, letting his name roll off her tongue, testing its taste, "are only interesting when they promise a reward for their uncovering." "What reward do you offer?" His eyes, the color of aged amber in the firelight, crinkled at the corners. A low chuckle rumbled in his chest, a sound that vibrated through the very floorboards and resonated deep within her. "A fair question, Ilara, and one I am more than prepared to answer." Perhaps he began, rising slowly from his armchair, his movements fluid and unhurried, like a predator circling its prey. "The reward is in the journey itself. The thrill of the chase, the unraveling of layers, the exquisite anticipation of what lies beneath." He took a step towards her, then another, the rich fabric of his smoking jacket rustling softly. The scent of him, an intoxicating blend of old leather, wood smoke, and something uniquely masculine and clean, enveloped her, drawing her deeper into his orbit. Ilara remained seated, her posture elegant, her heart a frantic bird fluttering against her ribs. She watched him approach, her gaze unwavering, a silent dare in her eyes. He stopped directly in front of her, so close she could feel the faint warmth radiating from his body. His shadow fell over her, enveloping her in a sensual darkness. He didn't touch her, not yet. Instead, he leaned down, his face mere inches from hers, his breath warm against her cheek. "Or perhaps," he whispered, his voice a low, husky rumble that seemed to caress her skin, "the reward is simply me." Ilara's breath hitched. The audacity, the confidence, the sheer magnetic pull of the man was breathtaking. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks. But she wouldn't yield. Not yet. She tilted her head back slightly, her eyes still locked with his. "A bold claim, Julian," she murmured, her voice a little breathy despite her efforts to keep it steady. "And one that requires considerable proof." A slow smile spread across his face, a tantalizing curve of his lips that promised mischief and delight. He straightened slightly, his gaze dropping to the pearl at her throat, then lingering there, a silent acknowledgement of its throbbing pulse. "Proof, Ilara, is something I am quite adept at providing." He reached out slowly, deliberately. His fingers, long and strong, did not immediately touch her. Instead, they brushed against the velvet armrest of her chair, a feather-light caress that sent a jolt through her. Then, with an almost imperceptible movement, his thumb grazed the back of her hand, resting lightly on her wrist, just above her racing pulse point. The contact was electric, a small spark igniting a firestorm within her. "Tell me," he began again, his voice lower, more intimate now, "what kind of secrets intrigue you most? The kind whispered in the dark, the kind revealed in a shared glance, or perhaps," his thumb moved, tracing the delicate veins beneath her skin, "the kind that only the most intimate touch can reveal. The kind that only the most intimate touch can reveal." Ilara felt herself tremble, a delicious tremor that started deep within her core and spread outwards. His touch was so light, so innocent, and yet it held such profound power. Her mind, usually so sharp and controlled, felt hazy, filled with the warmth of his proximity, the scent of him, the insistent pressure of his thumb. I am partial to secrets that unfold slowly, she managed, her voice barely a whisper. Those that build in intensity, revealing themselves in stages, each layer more intoxicating than the last. Julian's smile deepened, a knowing glint in his amber eyes. An excellent preference, Ilara. For I too appreciate the art of the slow reveal. His fingers, still resting on her wrist, began to move, not pulling her, but simply exploring the delicate skin, the slender bones. It was a gesture of profound intimacy, as if he were mapping her very essence with his touch. He then shifted his weight, and Ilara found her breath catching again. He leaned down once more, not quite kissing her, but bringing his lips so close to her ear that she could feel the warmth of his breath, hear the subtle rasp of his stubble. "May I offer you something to drink, Ilara? To aid in our unraveling?" She nodded, unable to speak, her throat suddenly dry. He straightened, his hand finally releasing her wrist, leaving behind an imprint of warmth and longing. He moved to a nearby mahogany cabinet, its polished surface gleaming in the firelight. As he turned, Ilara took a moment to compose herself, to breathe. But it was futile. Her body was humming, alive with an unfamiliar energy. He poured 2 generous measures of amber liquid into crystal tumblers. The clink of glass, a sharp counterpoint to the soft crackle of the fire. The rich, sweet scent of aged whiskey mingled with his own unique aroma. He offered one to her, and their fingers brushed as she took it, another small electric current passing between them. "To secrets," he murmured, raising his glass. "To their uncovering," Ilara replied, her voice gaining a little more strength. She took a sip. The whiskey was smooth, warming, a liquid fire that echoed the one now burning within her. Julian settled back into his armchair, but this time he pulled it slightly closer to hers. The subtle shift in proximity felt significant, a boundary gently crossed. He looked at her over the rim of his glass, his eyes holding a depth that both fascinated and unnerved her. "You speak of layers, Ilara," he began, his voice thoughtful. "Tell me, what is the most intriguing layer a person can possess?" Ilara considered this, swirling the whiskey in her glass. "Perhaps the layer of hidden vulnerability," she mused. "The strength we project to the world, and the softer truths we guard beneath it. It is in the revealing of that vulnerability that true intimacy begins." A flicker of something unreadable passed through his eyes, a momentary shadow. "A profound observation," he said, his voice softer now, "and one that speaks of a woman who has perhaps guarded her own vulnerabilities closely." He had seen through her, just like that. A prickle of defensiveness rose, quickly followed by a strange sense of liberation. She had spent her life cultivating an aura of composure, of untouchable elegance. To be seen, truly seen, was both terrifying and exhilarating. "Perhaps," she admitted, meeting his gaze directly. "And you, Julian, what secrets do you keep beneath your own carefully constructed layers?" He took a slow sip of his whiskey, his gaze never leaving hers. "Ah, but that Ilara would be telling," he said, a playful glint returning to his eyes. "And we are still very much in the initial stages of our game, aren't we? Besides," he leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, "some secrets are better discovered than confessed." He placed his glass on a small table beside him, then slowly, deliberately, reached out. His hand rose, not towards her face but towards her hair. Her breath caught in her throat. His fingers, warm and gentle, threaded through a loose strand that had escaped her intricate coiffure, lifting it, letting it drift back down. "Your hair," he murmured, his voice a silken thread, "is like spun moonlight. I imagine it unbound, flowing freely." The simple compliment, the tender gesture, sent a wave of heat through Ilara. She felt a primal instinct to lean into his touch, to press herself against him. Instead, she remained still, her entire being focused on the delicate sensation of his fingers in her hair. "It is usually quite contained," she replied, her voice a little shaky. The desire to break free, to unleash herself, was a powerful, almost overwhelming urge. And perhaps, he whispered, his eyes dark and intense, that is a secret in itself. The wildness beneath the carefully sculpted exterior. His hand moved, slowly, from her hair to the back of her neck, his thumb brushing the sensitive skin just below her earlobe. A shiver, deep and involuntary, coursed through her. "You have a way, Julian," she managed, her voice a mere breath, "of seeing things others do not." "Only what you allow me to see, Alara," he corrected softly, his touch lingering, sending exquisite shivers down her spine. "And sometimes, what you perhaps do not even realize you are showing." His touch was a revelation, a gentle probing that unearthed sensations she had long forgotten, or perhaps never truly known. He wasn't rushing, wasn't demanding. He was simply ethering, present, his touch a promise, an invitation to delve deeper. He leaned in again, his lips brushing her temple, then moving slowly, agonizingly slowly, down towards her ear. "Do you feel it, Alara?" he whispered, his voice a low thrum against her skin. "This connection? This pull?" Her eyes fluttered shut. "Yes," she breathed, the word torn from her. "I feel it." His lips grazed the delicate curve of her ear, sending shivers radiating through her entire body. He breathed in deeply, as if savoring her scent. "You smell of jasmine and something else, something wild and untamed, like a forest after rain." The compliment, so unexpected and intimate, painted a vivid image in her mind, a sense of raw, natural beauty that contrasted sharply with her carefully cultivated elegance. It was as if he saw beyond the silken pearls, to the very core of her being. His fingers, still on the back of her neck, began a slow, sensual massage, his thumb pressing lightly into the sensitive hollows. Her head lolled back slightly, exposing the graceful curve of her throat. The pearl at her neck felt like a burning ember now, echoing the fire in her veins. "This pearl," he murmured, his gaze dropping to it again. "It suits you, pristine, yet holding such depth within its surface. Like you, Alara." He finally removed his hand from her neck, but only to bring it to the pearl. His fingertip traced its smooth, cool surface, then moved lower, just grazing the top of her décolletage, the soft swell of her breast visible above the silk of her gown. The whisper of his touch through the fabric was almost unbearable, a delicious torment. "Each jewel tells a story," he said, his voice a low, hypnotic drawl. "What story does this one tell you?" Alara found it difficult to form words. Her body was alight, her senses overwhelmed. The scent of him, the warmth of his hand, the intoxicating proximity. It speaks of patience," she finally managed, her voice husky. "Of something precious, carefully nurtured." "Patience," he echoed, his eyes locking with hers. "A virtue in many things, Alara. But sometimes patience can be exquisitely tested." He paused, letting the implication hang in the air, thick with unspoken desire. His gaze was so intense, so consuming, that Alara felt utterly exposed yet thrillingly alive. He wasn't just looking at her. He was seeing into her, peeling back the layers with every word, every touch. He then rose gracefully, extending his hand to her. "Come, Alara. Let us test the boundaries of patience, shall we?" Her hand trembled slightly as she placed it in his. His grip was firm, warm, instantly reassuring and electrifying. He pulled her gently to her feet, bringing her flush against him. The soft fabrics of their clothing, the velvet of his jacket against the silk of her gown, created a delicious friction. She could feel the hard planes of his chest, the warmth of his body, the subtle rhythm of his breathing. Her gaze flickered up to his, a silent question in her eyes. He answered it with a slow, deliberate lowering of his head. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat demanding release. The anticipation was almost painful, a sweet agony that promised an even sweeter reward. His lips finally met hers. It was not a forceful kiss, not a hurried one. It was a slow, exploratory touch, a soft press that tasted of whiskey and warmth, and a promise of so much more. His lips were soft, yet firm, moving with a gentle persuasion that melted any remaining resistance within her. Ilara's eyes fluttered shut, a soft sigh escaping her. His hand, which had been holding hers, now moved to her waist, drawing her even closer, molding her body against his. The other hand rose to cup her jaw, his thumbs stroking the sensitive skin beneath her ear. The kiss deepened, becoming more insistent, more hungry. His tongue traced the seam of her lips, a silent question. Ilara parted them, and he plunged in, a slow, languid dance of discovery. His kiss was everything she had imagined and more. It was tender and fierce, demanding and yielding, a symphony of passion that ignited every nerve ending in her body. She responded instinctively, her hands finding purchase on his broad shoulders, clinging to him as if he were her only anchor in a suddenly swirling world. The world outside their embrace faded, leaving only the crackle of the fire, the taste of him, the feel of his body pressed against hers. She lost herself in the kiss, in the intoxicating rush of sensation. His fingers threaded into her hair, loosening more strands, letting them fall around her shoulders like a silken curtain. He broke the kiss slowly, reluctantly, leaving her breathless and yearning. His forehead rested against hers, their breaths mingling, ragged and quick. His eyes, still dark with desire, gazed into hers, searching, questioning. "You are even more intoxicating than I imagined, Ilara," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "And you, Julian," she replied, her voice shaky, "are a revelation." He smiled, a tender, possessive smile that sent another shiver through her. His hands moved, slowly, from her waist, up her back, tracing the delicate curve of her spine, sending delicious tremors in their wake. He pulled her closer still, if that were even possible, until no space remained between them. "This gown," he murmured, his fingers brushing against the silk that covered her shoulders. "It is exquisite. But I find myself wondering, what secrets does it guard?" He didn't wait for an answer. His fingers, deft and knowing, found the delicate fastenings at the back of her dress. Ilara tensed for a moment, then relaxed, a wave of surrender washing over her. The sound of the tiny hooks unfastening was barely audible, yet it resonated like a thunderclap in the charged silence of the room. The silk, released from its constraints, began to slip. It pooled around her shoulders, revealing the creamy expanse of her skin, the delicate line of her collarbones. Julian's eyes devoured the sight, a look of pure adoration mixed with hunger. "Beautiful," he breathed, his voice thick with desire. He gently pushed the silk further down, baring her shoulders, then her arms. The gown, now held only by the curve of her hips, whispered around her like a second skin, a tantalizing veil. She stood before him, clad only in her underthings and the shimmering silk, feeling utterly exposed, and yet gloriously free. He reached out, his hand tenderly cupping her shoulder, his thumb stroking the soft skin. "May I?" he asked, his voice low, his eyes seeking her permission. Ilara nodded, unable to speak, her gaze locked with his. She wanted him to touch her, to explore every inch of her, to lay bare all the secrets she had held so close. His hand moved, gliding down her arm, then back up, lingering at the curve of her elbow, the soft skin of her inner arm. Each touch was a promise, a slow unveiling, building a crescendo of sensation within her. His other hand went to her waist, drawing her closer again, her barely clad body pressed against the rougher texture of his clothes. "You are exquisite, Ilara," he whispered, his lips tracing a path from her temple to her jawline, then down to the pulse point in her throat. He kissed the pearl, a soft, reverent touch, then moved lower, just above the swell of her breasts. Her head fell back, a soft moan escaping her lips. The intensity was overwhelming, a delightful assault on her senses. She could feel his heart pounding against hers, a primal rhythm that resonated with her own quickening pulse. He continued to kiss her, a trail of fire down her neck, along her collarbone, his lips warm and demanding. His hands moved, slowly, sensually, over the silk of her gown, feeling the curves beneath. He traced the line of her hip, her waist, then ventured lower, brushing against the bare skin of her thigh where the gown had parted. Elara gasped, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. The desire was a roaring inferno now, consuming her, demanding release. She wanted to feel his skin against hers, to shed the remaining barriers between them. "Julian," she whispered, her voice raw with longing. "Please." He lifted his head, his eyes burning into hers. "Please what, Elara?" he asked, his voice husky, his own breath ragged. "Tell me your desires, whisper your secrets to me." She looked into his eyes, seeing a reflection of her own fierce longing. I want to feel you, Julian, all of you." A triumphant smile played on his lips. "And so you shall, my beautiful Elara, so you shall." He reached for the remaining silk, and with a gentle tug, the gown whispered to the floor, leaving her standing before him in nothing but delicate lace underthings. The firelight played over her curves, painting her in hues of gold and shadow. She felt a blush creep up her chest, but it was quickly replaced by a surge of defiant confidence. She met his gaze, unafraid, unashamed. His eyes, wide with admiration, swept over her, lingering on her breasts, her waist, the gentle curve of her hips. "Magnificent," he breathed, his voice filled with awe. He reached out his hands slowly, reverently cupping her face. He kissed her then, a deep, passionate kiss that stole her breath and ignited a new wave of yearning. His hands slid from her face, down her neck, over her shoulders, and then, with a sigh, gently cupped her breasts through the lace. Elara gasped, her back arching slightly, pressing her more fully into his touch. His thumbs brushed over her nipples, and they instantly hardened, aching for more. He continued to kiss her, his lips moving hungrily, as his hands explored the soft weight of her breasts, teasing and tormenting her through the delicate fabric. "You are pure fire, Elara," he murmured against her lips, his voice raw with desire. "A burning star." He pulled away from her lips, trailing kisses down her jawline, her neck, towards the valley between her breasts. His warm breath ghosted over her skin, leaving a trail of goosebumps in its wake. He lingered there, his lips just above the lace of her chemise, a silent promise hanging in the air. He slowly moved his hands from her breasts, letting them slide down her sides, over her ribs, to the narrow curve of her waist. He drew her closer still, their bodies pressing together, the rough fabric of his trousers a delicious contrast to her soft skin. She could feel the hard ridge of his arousal against her, a testament to his desire. Elara's hands, which had been clutching his shoulders, now moved lower, exploring the taut muscles of his back, feeling the warmth radiating from him. She wanted to strip away his clothes, to feel his skin against hers, to meet his hunger with her own. "Julian," she whispered again, her voice thick with longing, her body trembling with anticipation. "I want you." He pulled back slightly, his eyes burning into hers. "And I you, Elara," more than words can say. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the delicate lace that covered her stomach, then sliding lower, tracing the line of her hip. He knelt before her then, a gesture of reverence that took her breath away. Her eyes widened, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. He looked up at her, his gaze filled with a mixture of adoration and intense hunger. "Let me worship you, Elara," he whispered, his voice deep and resonant. His hands rested on her thighs, just above the lace of her knickers. She could feel the heat of his palms through the delicate fabric, sending a fresh wave of desire through her. He leaned forward, his lips brushing against her bare stomach, sending a jolt of pure pleasure through her. Elara closed her eyes, her head falling back, a soft moan escaping her lips. This was it. This was the unraveling she had craved, the complete surrender to sensation. His lips moved lower, teasing, tasting, leaving a trail of fire in their wake. He kissed the lace that covered her most intimate secrets, his breath warm and intoxicating. He gently pushed the lace aside, his fingers brushing against the soft skin of her inner thigh. Elara gasped, her body arching into his touch, her legs trembling. His lips, warm and insistent, found her, and a tidal wave of pleasure crashed over her, stealing her breath, consuming her entirely. She tangled her hands in his hair, holding him close, her body writhing with exquisite pleasure. Each touch, each taste, sent her higher, closer to the edge. His tongue was a skilled artist, painting sensations she had only dreamed of, drawing out her deepest desires. The world narrowed to this single intense sensation, this overwhelming pleasure. She was lost in it, adrift on a sea of pure bliss. Her body shuddered, every nerve ending screaming with delight. The fire in the hearth roared, mirroring the inferno within her. He continued his exquisite torture, drawing out the pleasure, savoring her moans, her gasps. Ilara felt herself teetering on the precipice, on the verge of total release. Her mind emptied, leaving only sensation, pure, unadulterated pleasure. Just as she felt she could take no more, that she would shatter into 1,000 pieces, he lifted his head, his eyes dark with triumphant desire. He rose slowly, his gaze never leaving hers, his lips moist and swollen from their intimate encounter. Ilara looked at him, breathless, flushed, her body still humming with the aftershocks of his touch. He had brought her to the brink, then pulled her back, leaving her aching for more, utterly undone. That, he whispered, his voice a low growl, was just the beginning, Ilara. Just a taste of the secrets we have yet to uncover. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. Come, he said, his eyes filled with a promise that made her heart leap. Let us take this journey somewhere, softer. Somewhere we can truly lose ourselves. He led her towards a door Ilara hadn't noticed before, hidden in the shadows of the room. It opened into a dimly lit corridor, and the air grew cooler, infused with the scent of lavender and fresh linen. He led her down the short hall, her hands still clasped in his, her bare skin tingling in the cool air. The next door opened into a bedroom, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight filtering through sheer curtains. A massive four-poster bed dominated the room, draped in heavy silks and piled high with plush pillows. The air here was serene, yet charged with an unspoken promise. Julian released her hand, walking to the bed. He pulled back the silken covers, revealing crisp white sheets. He turned to her, his gaze sweeping over her still trembling form. Ilara, he said, his voice soft, inviting. The night is still young, and we have so many more secrets to share. He held out a hand, a silent invitation to join him. Ilara's heart throbbed, a mixture of anticipation and pure, unadulterated desire. She walked towards him, her bare feet sinking into the plush rug, her eyes never leaving his. The journey had just truly begun. Her bare feet found the cool, smooth stone of the floor, then the plush, deep pile of a rug that silenced her approach. Each step was a deliberate surrender, a quiet declaration of intent. Caspian remained on the edge of the bed, his hand extended, a living sculpture of invitation. The warmth radiating from his skin seemed to reach her even before their hands met. When her fingers finally intertwined with his, a spark, not of electricity but of profound recognition, arced between them. His skin was firm, warm, a stark contrast to the trembling delicacy of her own. His thumb brushed over the back of her hand, a feather-light caress that sent shivers through her core. His gaze, a deep, fathomless blue, held hers captive, promising worlds yet undiscovered. Come, he whispered, his voice a low, resonant rumble that vibrated through her, a private melody. He gently pulled her forward, and she stepped closer, until her knees brushed the edge of the bed. The scent of him enveloped her, a subtle mix of sandalwood, crisp linen, and something uniquely his, a primal, compelling aroma that awakened a hunger deep within her. He didn't release her hand, but instead drew her down beside him, onto the soft, yielding mattress. The crisp white sheets, cool and inviting, whispered against her bare legs as she settled. He turned fully towards her, drawing his knees up, mirroring her posture. The distance between them was now negligible, a mere breath of air. He still held her hand, but his other hand reached up, his fingers tracing the delicate line of her jaw. A touch so tender it brought a tear to her eye. You are even more beautiful now, Ilara, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Stripped bare of expectations, of the world's demands, you are simply radiant. A blush bloomed across her cheeks, a flush of both vulnerability and burgeoning desire. She leaned into his touch, her eyes searching his, seeking reassurance, finding only adoration. She wanted to speak, to articulate the whirlwind of emotions that churned within her, but no words seemed adequate. Instead, she let her gaze speak, a silent echo of his own admiration. He shifted, his body moving closer still, until their thighs brushed, sending a new wave of heat through her. His fingers moved from her jaw, trailing down her throat, pausing at the frantic pulse beating wildly at the base of her neck. He felt it, she knew, felt the raw, untamed desire that pulsed beneath her skin. "Your heart speaks volumes," he whispered, his gaze dropping to her lips, full and parted slightly in anticipation. "And it sings a song I long to hear more fully." He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, to break the spell. But Elara had no such desire. She met him halfway, her lips parting further, a silent plea. His mouth descended upon hers, not with urgency, but with a profound tenderness that was infinitely more devastating. It was a kiss of exploration, of discovery. His lips were soft, warm, tasting of wine, and something uniquely clean and masculine. He didn't demand, he invited. His tongue delicately traced the seam of her lips, a gentle inquiry that sent a delicious shiver through her. She responded, tentatively at first, then with increasing confidence, her own tongue meeting his in a slow, sensual dance. The kiss deepened, becoming more confident, more knowing. His hand, which had been at her throat, moved to cup the back of her head, his fingers tangling in her loose hair, pulling her closer still. She responded by wrapping her arm around his waist, her fingers splaying across the firm plane of his back, feeling the warmth of his skin through the fine linen of his shirt. Time seemed to dissolve, leaving only the exquisite sensation of their lips, their breath mingling, their bodies pressing together. It was a kiss that promised everything, yet delivered only the beginning. When they finally broke apart, breathless and trembling, their foreheads rested against each other, their eyes still closed. "Elara," he breathed, his voice husky, "I have dreamt of this." She opened her eyes, meeting his, a universe of shared longing reflected between them. "As have I, Caspian," she confessed, her voice a mere whisper. He pulled back slightly, his hands framing her face, his thumbs gently stroking her cheekbones. His gaze dropped to her décolletage, where the lace of her chemise offered a tantalizing glimpse of the swell of her breasts. The air in the room seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken desires. "This journey," he began, his voice low, "requires a complete surrender. A trust that transcends words." His eyes returned to hers, earnest and searching. "Are you ready to truly surrender, Elara? To allow me to guide you? To show you depths of feeling you may not yet know?" Her heart pounded, a frantic drum against her ribs. Fear mingled with exhilaration, but the latter was far more potent. She nodded, unable to speak, her gaze unwavering. A slow, sensual smile spread across his face, a smile that spoke of both power and profound tenderness. "Good." He moved first, not away from her, but towards her. His fingers, still framing her face, tilted her head slightly. His eyes, dark with intent, watched her as he leaned in again, this time not for a kiss, but for something more intimate. His lips brushed against her temple, then moved to her earlobe, sending a jolt of pleasure through her. "Let me," he whispered, his breath warm against her skin, "unwrap you piece by exquisite piece." His hands, no longer on her face, moved to her shoulders, his thumbs gently pushing back the delicate lace straps of her chemise. Elara shivered, a delicious tremor that ran from her scalp to her toes. The fabric, already loose, slid down her arms with a whisper, pooling around her waist, revealing the pristine curve of her shoulders, the elegant line of her collarbones, and the gentle swell of her breasts, now freed from the confines of the lace. He didn't rush. His eyes devoured the sight, not with predatory hunger, but with an artist's appreciation for beauty. He lifted one hand, his fingers tracing the delicate curve of her shoulder, then the soft skin of her upper arm, down to her elbow. Each touch was deliberate, worshipful. "You are a masterpiece, Ilara," he murmured, his voice thick with admiration. She felt a blush creep up her neck, her skin tingling under his intense gaze. She was completely exposed, vulnerable, yet felt no shame, only an intoxicating sense of being truly seen, truly desired. He reached for the hem of her chemise, still gathered at her waist. With agonizing slowness he began to draw it down, past her hips, over the soft curve of her belly. His knuckles brushed against her skin, sending fire in their wake. Ilara held her breath, her eyes locked on his, watching the intensity of his focus. The chemise slipped lower, revealing the gentle curve of her hips, the slender line of her thighs. When it finally pulled at her ankles, she stepped out of it, shedding the last vestige of her previous self, standing before him in nothing but the soft glow of the bedside lamps. He rose from the bed then, mirroring her, and she realized he was still fully clothed, his crisp linen shirt and dark trousers a stark contrast to her nakedness. A momentary flicker of apprehension crossed her mind, but it was quickly replaced by a deeper trust as he reached for the buttons of his shirt. His movements were unhurried, each button a deliberate release. Her gaze, now emboldened, traced the path of his hands, watching as the fabric parted, revealing the broad expanse of his chest. His skin was tanned, smooth, with a dusting of dark hair that narrowed to a line down his abdomen. Muscles rippled beneath his skin, testament to a strength held in easy command. When the shirt was fully unbuttoned, he shrugged it off, letting it fall to the floor with a soft thud. He stood before her, a magnificent vision of masculine power and grace. His shoulders were broad, his arms corded with strength, his chest rising and falling with a controlled breath. He reached for the buckle of his trousers, his eyes never leaving hers. The sound of the leather unfastening was surprisingly loud in the hushed room. He unzipped them, then pushed them down, revealing the strong athletic lines of his legs. He stepped out of them, then kicked them aside, joining her in their shared vulnerability. Now they stood facing each other, two souls laid bare, illuminated by the soft light, surrounded by the hushed anticipation of the night. The air vibrated with a palpable energy, a silent conversation of desire and longing. He reached for her again, but this time his touch was different. His hands cupped her waist, drawing her gently towards him until their naked bodies brushed. The contact was electric, a jolt of pure sensation. Her breasts, full and aching, pressed against the hard planes of his chest. The soft hair on his skin tickled hers, sending goosebumps dancing across her flesh. He bent his head, his lips finding the sensitive skin of her shoulder, then trailing up her neck to her ear. "You feel exquisite," he whispered, his voice a low growl that resonated deep within her. "Like silk and fire." His hands moved from her waist, slowly, deliberately, up her back, tracing the delicate curve of her spine. Her fingers, emboldened by his touch, found their way to his hair, thick and soft, pulling him closer. She tilted her head back, offering him full access to her neck, where his lips were now raining soft, intoxicating kisses. He savored the taste of her, the scent of her, exploring every inch of her exposed skin with his mouth and tongue. Her breath hitched, a soft moan escaping her lips as his teeth gently nipped at the sensitive skin behind her ear. "Caspian," she breathed, her voice a shaky whisper, her hands tangling deeper in his hair. He responded with a low hum, his lips moving down, to the hollow of her throat, then lower, to the swell of her breast. He paused there, his hot breath teasing her nipple through the thin air. Her entire body trembled with anticipation, her core aching with a longing she had never known. He lowered himself onto the bed, pulling her down with him, so that she lay above him, her breasts brushing his chest. His hands moved to cup them, his thumbs circling her already hardened nipples. A gasp escaped her lips, a sound of pure pleasure. "Beautiful," he murmured, his eyes dark with hunger as he watched her reaction. He dipped his head, his tongue flicking out to taste one peak, then the other, sending waves of exquisite sensation through her. He suckled gently, then more firmly, drawing a guttural moan from her. Ilara arched her back, pressing herself more fully against his mouth, lost in the intoxicating pleasure he was so expertly orchestrating. Her fingers tangled in his hair, holding him closer, silently begging him for more. He responded, his hands moving from her breasts, down her sides, over the delicate curve of her waist, to her hips, pulling her lower, until she felt the hard ridge of his arousal pressing against her. The contact was a shock, a profound realization of the depth of their shared desire. A new kind of heat flared within her, a deep, burning ache that demanded release. She shifted, instinctively seeking more contact, pressing herself closer, her hips rocking gently against his. He groaned, a raw, masculine sound that thrilled her. "Not yet, my Ilara," he whispered, his voice thick with restraint. "There are still so many secrets to uncover." He rolled effortlessly, reversing their positions, so that she was now beneath him, pinned gently by his weight. His eyes, burning with passion, met hers. "Let me adore you," he said, his voice a promise. His gaze swept over her body, lingering on her breasts, her belly, her thighs. He leaned down, his lips trailing a path of fire down her sternum, over her diaphragm, to the soft skin of her belly. His tongue flicked out, teasing her navel, sending shivers through her. Ilara gasped, her hands instinctively reaching for him, her fingers digging into the firm muscles of his back. He continued his descent, a journey of pure sensual devotion. His lips brushed her inner thigh, sending a jolt of electric pleasure straight to her core. She arched her back, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps, her body writhing beneath his exquisite torment. "Caspian," she whimpered, her voice barely audible, a plea, a surrender. He lifted his head, his eyes, dark and intense, meeting hers. "Tell me what you desire, Ilara," he commanded, his voice a low, seductive rumble. She wanted to articulate it, to put words to the wild, untamed craving that consumed her, but her mind was a dizzying blur of sensation. "You," she finally managed. "I desire you. All of you." A slow, satisfied smile spread across his face, a look of profound pleasure. "And you shall have me, my love, but first, let me taste all of you." He lowered his head again, his breath warm against her most intimate skin. Ilara's eyes fluttered shut, her body tensing, then relaxing into a wave of pure sensation as his lips found her, tasting, teasing, exploring with an expertise that stole her breath away. A moan, deep and unrestrained, tore from her throat. Her hips arched, her hands gripping the sheets, then reaching for him, pulling him closer, deeper into the intoxicating pleasure he offered. He suckled, he licked, he teased, bringing her to the brink of ecstasy again and again, drawing out the pleasure, making it a slow, agonizingly beautiful ascent. Her body convulsed, a profound tremor that shook her from head to toe. She cried out, his name a guttural gasp on her lips, as the first wave of climax crashed over her, a wave so powerful it left her breathless, trembling, and utterly undone. He didn't stop. He continued his exquisite ministrations, feeding the lingering tremors, coaxing her back to the precipice, building the sensation once more, a relentless tide of pleasure. Ilara was lost, adrift in a sea of pure feeling, her body no longer her own, but an instrument of his masterful touch. Another gasp, another cry, as a second, even more potent wave washed over her, carrying her higher, deeper into the realm of pure bliss. Her entire being felt alive, vibrant, intensely sensitive. She was a symphony of sensation, every nerve ending singing. Finally, he lifted his head, his eyes dark with shared passion, meeting hers. He climbed back up her body, his weight a welcome pressure, his gaze fixed on her face, seeing the raw emotion, the profound release etched there. "Now," he breathed, his voice ragged with desire, "now, my Ilara, let us truly become one." He positioned himself between her legs, his hard arousal pressing against her entrance, a gentle, insistent pressure. Her eyes, still heavy-lidded from her recent climax, fluttered open, meeting his. There was no hesitation, no doubt, only a profound sense of rightness. He leaned down, kissing her deeply, thoroughly, his tongue tangling with hers in a dance of urgent desire. As their lips met, he pressed forward, slowly, deliberately, entering her with a tenderness that belied the power of the moment. Ilara gasped, a sound of both pain and profound pleasure, as she stretched to accommodate him. Her body, still humming from his touch, welcomed him, enveloping him in a sheath of warmth and tightness. He paused, allowing her to adjust, his eyes watching her, ensuring her comfort. "Are you with me, Ilara?" he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. She nodded, her eyes shining with tears of joy and sensation. "Yes, Caspian. Completely." He began to move then, slowly at first, a gentle rhythm that quickly deepened, becoming more insistent, more urgent. Her hips instinctively rose to meet his, matching his pace, their bodies moving in a primal dance as old as time itself. Each thrust was a deeper connection, a melding of body and soul. The sensation was overwhelming, intoxicating. Her nails, without conscious thought, dug into the firm muscles of his back, pulling him closer, urging him deeper. He groaned, his breath hot against her ear as he whispered words of adoration, of passion, of longing. "My beautiful Ilara," he murmured, his voice raw with emotion. "You are everything I have ever desired." The friction, the heat, the rhythmic thrusts built to an unbearable crescendo. Ilara felt herself spiraling, clinging to him, her body convulsing around his. Her climax was a tidal wave, pulling her under, leaving her breathless and shaking, crying out his name as she shattered into a million exquisite pieces. He followed quickly, his body tensing, his own groan echoing hers as he surged into her one last time, emptying himself into her, a profound release that shook his entire frame. He collapsed onto her, his weight a comforting blanket, his breath ragged against her neck. They lay there for a long time, entwined, their bodies slick with sweat, their hearts pounding in unison. The room was silent save for their ragged breathing, the lingering scent of their passion hanging heavy in the air. He shifted slightly, propping himself on an elbow, his gaze tenderly sweeping over her face. He reached out, his thumb gently wiping a tear that had escaped the corner of her eye. "Are you all right, my love?" he asked, his voice soft, laced with concern. Ilara smiled, a slow, radiant smile that spoke volumes. "More than all right, Caspian. I feel reborn." He kissed her then, a soft, lingering kiss that was less about passion and more about profound affection and connection. "You are magnificent, Ilara. Truly magnificent." He pulled her closer, spooning her against his body, his arm wrapping around her waist, holding her securely. She snuggled into him, her head resting on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her back. The physical intimacy had forged a bond that felt unbreakable, a silent language spoken between their souls. "I feel as though I've known you forever," she whispered, her voice still a little shaky. He tightened his embrace. "Perhaps you have in another lifetime. Or perhaps our souls simply recognized each other tonight." They lay in comfortable silence for a long time, the quiet broken only by the soft sounds of the night, filtering through the open balcony doors. The moon, a silver sliver in the velvet sky, cast a gentle glow into the room, painting the crisp white sheets in shades of pearl and shadow. Ilara felt utterly safe, completely cherished, and profoundly loved. All the anxieties, the uncertainties, the unspoken longing she had carried, had dissolved in the crucible of their shared passion. This wasn't just physical desire, it was a profound emotional connection, a spiritual recognition that transcended the corporeal. Eventually, as the first faint blush of dawn began to paint the sky with hues of rose and gold, Ilara stirred, feeling the gentle warmth of Caspian's body against hers. She turned in his arms, her eyes fluttering open to meet his. He was already awake, watching her, a soft, tender smile playing on his lips. "Good morning, my Ilara," he murmured, his voice husky with sleep and tenderness. "Good morning, Caspian," she replied, her own voice soft and full of the lingering warmth of their night. He brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, his touch as gentle as a butterfly's wing. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "The best sleep I've had in years, like I was finally home." His smile deepened, his eyes shining with an emotion that mirrored her own. "That is precisely how I feel, my love, like I have finally found my home." He leaned in, kissing her softly, a morning kiss that tasted of lingering passion and the promise of a new day. It was a kiss that spoke of comfort, of deep affection, of a bond forged in the fires of intimacy. They rose from the bed eventually, moving with a languid grace that spoke of their shared experience. There was no awkwardness, only a profound sense of ease and familiarity. He offered her his hand and she took it, their fingers intertwining naturally. They walked to the balcony, the cool morning air a gentle balm on their skin. The world outside was slowly awakening, the first bird song piercing the quiet, the distant sound of waves, a soothing murmur. They stood there for a long moment, simply watching the sunrise, their bodies pressed together, his arm around her waist, her head resting against his shoulder. "What now, Caspian?" she asked, her voice soft, full of a hope she hadn't dared to feel before. He turned to her, his gaze serious, yet filled with a profound tenderness. "Now, Ilara, we begin. We begin our journey, truly, together. No more secrets, no more hesitations. Only honesty, trust, and a love that I believe will only deepen with each passing day." He took her face in his hands, his thumbs gently stroking her cheeks. "I want you in my life, Ilara. Not just for a night, but for all the nights and days to come. I want to explore every facet of you, to cherish every part of your being. I want to build a life with you, filled with passion, laughter, and an unwavering connection." Tears welled in Ilara's eyes, tears of profound happiness and relief. This was everything she had secretly longed for, everything she hadn't dared to ask for. "Oh, Caspian," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He smiled, a radiant, heart-stopping smile that filled her with warmth. He leaned in, capturing her lips in a kiss that was both a promise and a declaration. It was a kiss that sealed their fate, an affirmation of a love that had blossomed in the most unexpected of circumstances, under the guise of shared secrets and stolen desires. They spent the rest of the morning in a blissful haze, sharing a light breakfast on the balcony as the sun climbed higher in the sky. They talked not about grand plans, but about small things, about their dreams, their pasts, their hopes for the future. Each word, each shared glance, each gentle touch, wove the fabric of their nascent relationship tighter, stronger. Ilara felt a sense of peace she had never known. The woman who had arrived at this villa, guarded and slightly fearful, had been transformed. She was open, vulnerable, and utterly alive. Caspian had not just shared his secrets with her. He had helped her unlock her own. As the morning drew to a close, and the world outside the villa began its full, bustling activity, Ilara knew with every fiber of her being that her journey had not ended here. It had merely found its true beginning. With Caspian by her side, holding her hand, she was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that their shared love would illuminate every step of the way. The night indeed had been young, and the secrets they had shared had transformed them forever.